Welcome back to my channel. In the past, I've touched on stair refinishing in a number of my videos, but this one is going to be a comprehensive start to finish video on how to refinish your tired old stairs, probably covered in rug, with hardwood treads, painted or stained risers, including all the tools, techniques, and tricks of the trade that you need to get it done. Enjoy the video. All right, so one of the things you're going to do in the very beginning is source your materials. Now, as far as stair treads go, which is sort of the feature point of a stair refinishing job, I always choose a solid hardwood tread and that it's actually laminated. And it looks, at first glance, it looks like a solid piece of hardwood. But if you look at the end grain here, the end cut, you can see the different laminations. And this is what prevents the stair tread from cupping. Because if you were to use, a 10.5-inch wide piece of solid oak, it would cup over time and maybe even before you even finish your project. Now, one of the things that I do is I always save my offcuts, like this as a stair builder. I save my offcuts so that I can stain up samples and right from the get-go is be able to show my customers what the end product's going to look like, including a clear finish on top of the stair tread. You can see here I do things like no wiping of the stain, or leaving the stain for 30 minutes and then wiping, and all those sorts of things, because it does make a difference on the finish. And that would be, strangely enough, the hardest thing to get right is the stain color. Now, I'm going to show you later in the video where, if it's a close stringer stair, how I back bevel the stair tread on the bottom portion where it goes up against the riser, so there's room for glue and you don't get squeezed up on your freshly done riser. As far as risers go, a lot of people will opt for a white riser, and it's sort of common, or off-white or what have you. Risers and stringer to match, in a white color, and it's a really easy, good way to cover up little things that you'll see after. The other option is a stained plywood stair riser, and sometimes you have to go to a little bit thicker piece of plywood. This is 1/4 inch, but in the past I've used 3/8 or 1/2 inch, just because sometimes the 1/4 inch products don't take stain really well. There's not a lot of material there for the stain to soak into. For white, I really like just using MDF, which is very cost effective. It doesn't warp or cup, and it takes paint really well. So those are some of the highlights. Watch the video, and then if you're a pro, then you'll know, all the tricks of the trade. But if you're a homeowner with some skills, you'll be able to determine whether this is something you want to take on yourself, if you have the right tools and skill level, or whether you hire a professional. Now, this stair tread material is going to run anywhere from $40 to $100 for, say, a 42-inch length. And of course, that's in Canada, and United States, the prices will be different. But a lot of times people will say, well, can't I just use my tongue and groove hardwood flooring for my stair treads and then buy nosing, and it'll be much more economical? Well, actually it won't, because by the time you put the nosing on and then 2 or 3 pieces of tongue and groove oak and fit it all together so that it looks good, your labor costs are way more than what it's going to cost you to take a raw piece of hardwood, stain it up and get it all pre-finished and attach it. So I just thought I'd cover that, and it is a really good way to do stairs, and the stair treads are very solid, very durable, and they're really clean looking and fairly easy to assemble once everything is prepared. Now, in order to determine the proper depth of your tread, you're going to measure the existing tread minus the nosing and add approximately 1 inch or 1.25 inches, no more. Anything more than that can be a trip hazard, and in most codes is not allowed. Once I have the treads trimmed to the desired depth, then I do a little back bevel at 15 degrees on the bottom 2/3 of the tread. It should be noted that if you need any nosing pieces, to do that before you trim your tread down to width. And I'll put a link to the nosing video right here. So when we stain our stair and railing projects, there's a few tricks that we use to get the best results. Staining can be really tricky. Oak is more forgiving than maple. A lot of times we prefer to use oak, of course, because it's an open grain hardwood. But the process we follow is we sand the finished piece of oak first with a 120 grain paper. We sand parallel with the grain. Then what we'll do is wipe it down with a wet cloth, and that makes the fibers stand up and the grain open. And then we'll give it a very light sanding after that water dries. Then we're going to put on a coat of stain, fairly liberal coat of stain, with a foam brush, and just let it dry without wiping. Then probably the second day we'll do the second coat, and that will be brushed on a lighter coat and then wiped off in about 5 minutes. Alden here is doing this piece of oak. He's done all the stair treads and all the railings already, and he is really talented at doing this staining process, and it just takes some patience and care. And sometimes if you get a funny looking spot, you'll have to sand it off and redo the piece, and that's just the nature of the job. Then you're going to leave it for at least 24 hours, maybe even 48, depending on the type of stain you're using. And then you're going to apply a clear coat with a foam applicator like this. And it makes a real nice finish. And once you're done, it's sort of got a self-leveling capability to it, and it makes it look like it's been sprayed. I do about 3 coats, and between the third and fourth coat I give a light sand with 320 sandpaper. You don't want to use 120 because you'll take stain off the edges and you'll have a bald spot. And then on the fourth coat, depending on the make and type of clear coat, there is some that have a hardener, and I'll add the hardener and do my fourth coat, and then I just leave it. And another important tip is just leave these stair treads laid out with nothing resting on top of them for several days. So the reason you do that is so that if you pile them after, doing your fourth coat, they'll stick together and you've wasted a whole bunch of time and money. So leave them laid out on your bench, let them dry for several days. Finally, you're going to wrap them up in paper and deliver them to the job site for installation. Once you're at the job site, this is one of those jobs where you're going to have to consider some kind of dust barrier. We use the dust barrier door from FastCap, and it works pretty well. You're going to have to remove all the rug off the stairs. Luckily, the customer did that job for us on this project. You're going to end up doing a whole lot of cutting with a skill saw, routing, even sanding. So the dust control is an important consideration. So here I'm making a flush cut with the stringer into the stair tread with a fine multi-tool. I would say that a multi-tool is a must-have for this kind of project. You're going to make that flush cut with the multi-tool right through the nosing. Then you're going to use a combination square to mark the depth of the nosing and mark it clearly with a straight edge so you can cut that nosing right off the staircase with a skill saw. You want to cut that nosing as flush as possible with the riser. As you're going to see here, hitting nails with your saw is a reality in this job. There's probably thousands of staples in a rugged staircase. So I'll just use a sharp but inexpensive blade for this job. So the skill saw will only go so far, and you're going to have to finish the cut with a handsaw, or my choice would be a multi-tool in the interest of health. If I have a lip left over, a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch past the riser, then I'll use a small router with a flush trim bit. And you're going to be able to get fairly close to the stringer with a router like this. The next step is going to be sanding those cut stringers so they're nice and flush against the riser. You're going to use a sander with dust control and 80 or 100 grit paper to make the job go quick. And when you're done, you're going to be left with the embedded portion of the tread on each stringer. You're going to have a whole bunch of them. You'll have to fill these with Bondo or wood filler and then sand it off nice and flush. Then you're going to cover those spots with an oil-based primer like Zinsser, and in fact you're going to prime the entire stringer with that same oil-based product. Once you're done that, you're going to cover it with a high quality paint, 1 or 2 coats. All right, so I'm going to talk about what dimensionally happens with your stairs when you add tread onto the staircase. My helper Laval is going to help demonstrate this. But presuming that your staircase is built properly, you're going to have a consistent rise all throughout the stairs. So every step should be the same according to the code with a little bit of variance. Now, what happens when you add a stair tread onto an existing set of stairs? Each step is going to remain the same because you're adding the tread to each step. But the bottom one will actually be taller, and if you think about it, the top one will actually be shorter. But in many cases, older homes have had a new floor added, and that sort of mitigates that problem. The same at the top. But even if you haven't changed any of the flooring, that should not create a problem, and I've never had a complaint. Now in the video, I'm mostly covering the closed stair stringer scenario, but if you have an open stringer like this, and you're cutting off the existing plywood stair tread, maybe your stairs are covered in rug, and putting on a new tread, there's 2 things you need to know. One is you're going to have to buy a stair tread with a return on it. So it's going to have a miter so you won't see this end grain, and that's available at most suppliers. The other thing is because you've cut the plywood off right in this area here, you're going to need to put a piece of trim there to cover that from the side, and it works out really well. Now in this particular job I'm using a painted riser, so I've simply taken a full sheet of 4x8 1/4 inch MDF and then coated it with Zinsser primer. Once the risers are cut to dimension, I'm going to coat them with 2 or 3 coats of a high quality paint like Cloverdale Multimaster. And I'm going to use a foam roller to get a nice smooth finish. All right, so we're installing the risers and the treads, and I'm using a tool called a Collins tread gauge. And so what you do is you use a spanner that's 1.5 by 3/4, and it has to be less obviously than the size of the tread, and you just fit it in place, and you can trace your riser and your tread accurately. Because one of the things with older stairs especially, you get some sagging and the cuts are often off square. So I'll just show you how you do that. So I'm just going to loosen these off, set the Collins gauge in place. Best thing to do is get one side fitting nice against the stair stringer, and then tighten this up securely. Push the other side up against the opposite stringer. Now I'm just going to use a nail set, slide it in one of these holes, and pride it against my stick, and then I'll just tighten up these 2 wing nuts here, and that'll give me a very accurate template for my riser. Now I can go to the saw, cut my riser. What I'll do is I'll take the pencil line off, and it should be right on. And then simply trace your line. And you can see that this one's off just a little bit. So I'm just going to move the saw like that, just by eye sort of thing. I'm going to come down here and see where the teeth are touching on the line there. Touching on the line there, that means I have to go a little bit more. Swing the saw a little bit more to the left. And touching the line here, touching the line there. That should be good. Okay, so this riser fits really nice. You can see a little black line where the riser intersects with the stair stringer, and that pretty much can't be avoided with white on white. You're going to see a dark line there. We're going to use a little bit of white caulking to clean that up when we're done. So the next step will be to use the stair gauge to mark our tread. All right. So now to mark the stair tread, same process. We're going to fit it tight against the stringer. Well, I'm doing exactly the same thing on the other side. Got that nice and tight. And I'm going to go to my saw and cut the tread. And I'm just going to put some masking tape on my dark stair tread so the pencil line will show up. Doesn't hurt to be really fussy when you're doing this, and check your gauge numerous times. There we go. Now, I'll go back to 0. Okay, so one of the things I can do is I can make an initial cut maybe 1/8 of an inch away from my line. Then I can see if my miter saw is tracking properly or if I need to adjust the angle. So I would say ever so slightly this needs to go this way. Just about like that. Should do it. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that setting. Now I'm going to move it over. So I'm going to take the line off. Okay. And we'll go to the other side. Alright, so that definitely has to go almost a degree that way. Alright, I think that's it. Now, one of the things I'm going to do here is I'm going to move this saw this way. That's going to help me fit that tread into that staircase. So here is what a 3-degree angle looks like on a standard stair tread. It's not severe, as you can see, but it's enough to assist getting the tread between the stringers. Alright, so that fit really nice. Snug, which is good. So now we just have to glue that in place, and we're going to set it with a couple of brad nails. And just so you know, if the stairs are accessible from underneath, I'll use a pan head screw or a flathead screw from underneath to hold the treads down, as well as some stair adhesive. The one thing I will mention to you is that you can do this whole process with a track saw and a guide, but unfortunately we're not able to cut inside the house here because of all the musical instruments in the house. The people are musicians, so we have to cut outside on the miter saw. But you could use a compact track saw, a short little track, and cut your treads right inside if you didn't have that problem, or if it was a house under construction. All right, so I've just got the riser. I've pried it up with some little pry bars so it's snug to the tread. And I'm going to use a 23 gauge pin, about 1 inch long, just to hold that riser in place. And I can hide my pins along the bottom here where the stair tread is going to cover. A little trick I do is I hide the brad nails in a dark portion of the oak grain, so it can easily be filled with a dark colored crayon. Now you're going to notice throughout this video that I'm using footage from different builds, and that's because I want to cherry pick the best footage to show what I want to teach in this video. Every staircase job you do is going to be different, and there's unique problems with each one. Subsequently, there's a few different techniques that I'm going to add in here that will help you understand how you can adapt your processes. For example, if you have stringers that are totally beat up and you can't rectify them, then you may have to use a stair skirting operation to get the stairs the way you want. And I have a video, and I'll put a link here to that video. But also the other thing that can happen is if you've got a railing shoe or some other kind of structural obstruction on the top of the stringer, then you can't use a Collins tread gauge to mark the riser. So I've come up with a little idea with hot glue and hardboard. That works, but you know what? You could actually make your own riser gauge, and I'm thinking of doing that myself. So I hope that helps you. One of the things you may run into is a curved or cupped stringer. In those cases, you're going to have to scribe your riser and or your tread and use a sander or even a jigsaw to correct that problem. I'm going to show you how I make a template out of some scrap pieces of 1/4 inch MDF to cut this tread that goes around the newel post. A little bit tricky. Angles are slightly off here and there because of an old set of stairs. So I'm just going to hot glue these pieces of MDF in place and then use that as my template. Yeah, there. That's going to go. I'm not going to pound it down all the way because there's no glue there. So you can see that that's a really nice fit. Hey, thanks for hanging in for such a long, detailed video. I appreciate your patience, but there's just no way I can cover a subject like this in a few minutes. I'm going to sign off here, but before you go, check out what my granddaughter Laval has to say about supporting this channel. Take care. See you on the next video.
And remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. And eat your vegetables.